Hello and welcome to this edition of Arirang News. I'm Kwon Jang-ho and thank you for joining us. South Korea, Japan and China held three-way talks in Tokyo this morning where they pledged to continue joint efforts in dealing with North Korea. This comes as reports from Beijing and Pyongyang confirm that Kim Jong-un travelled to Dalian in China to meet with Xi Jinping again earlier this week. And then as President Trump announced he was withdrawing from the Iran deal, he revealed U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was in Pyongyang for negotiations with North Korean officials. A busy day in Korean affairs, and we'll discuss all that with an expert here in the studio later. But first, we catch up with the latest updates with Devin Whiting at the News Center. Devin?
Hi, Jung-ho. Yes, as you said, President Moon is in Tokyo today for the Trilateral Summit with Japan and China. He is the first sitting Korean president to visit Japan in 6 years, and it's the first time the Trilateral Summit has been held in more than 2.5 years. A lot is being discussed and done. We now connect to our Blue House correspondent Hwang Ho-jun in Tokyo, who's on the phone. Ho-jun, sounds like it's been quite a day over there on the other side of the East Sea.
Devin, it was definitely the game of diplomacy today. Resuming the three-way talks for the first time since 2015, President Moon, Japanese Prime Minister Abe, and Chinese Premier Lee said they thoroughly discussed how the three countries can cooperate to deal with the North Korean issue while seeking the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and the establishment of lasting peace in the region. They welcomed the outcome of the recent inter-Korean summit and even adopted a special statement welcoming the Panmunjom Declaration. While the statement itself is yet to be revealed, it's likely they expressed hope for the success of the upcoming Pyongyang-Washington summit and pledged joint efforts so the success of the inter-Korean summit will lead to peace and stability in Northeast Asia. Of course, the focal point of each leader reflected a slightly different approach. Take a listen.
항구적 평화 정착을 위한 과정에서 삼국 간 긴밀한 소통과 협력이 지속적으로 이루어지길 기대하고 약속합니다.
It is the three countries' common stance to completely fulfill the UN Security Council's resolutions against the North Korean issues.
China hopes for the restoration of dialogue and political resolution of the Korean Peninsula issue by successfully taking advantage of this opportunity. To this end, China will continue to play a constructive role.
So as you can see, President Moon voiced the importance of holding the Trilateral Summit on a regular basis. Japan stressed that the three countries need to strongly urge North Korea to take concrete action, such as resolving the decades-long issue of North Korean abductions of Japanese citizens. And China wanted to make sure that it would still be able to exert influence on North Korean affairs. Shortly afterwards, President Moon held a separate summit with Prime Minister Abe, which was then followed by a luncheon hosted by the Japanese leader. He also held another one-on-one with Lee Ko-chang, which we just heard ended a few moments ago. All three countries had some things to discuss with one another in terms of historical issues. Devin?
Right, Ho-jun, well, it does seem that, as usual, they do have historical issues to discuss, but it does seem that Pyongyang's engaging with other countries on the global stage is actually changing diplomacy in Asia.
You're absolutely right, and that's why economic cooperation between the three countries was also mentioned today. The leaders noted the combined GDP of the three countries accounts for around 20% of the global economy, actually, and agreed that together they can accomplish anything. They also attended a business summit, encouraging business leaders from all three countries to do more together. President would stress the need for the three countries to jointly tackle trade protectionism and also call for joint efforts to conclude negotiations for the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, a regional free trade pact involving South Korea, Japan, and China, as well as ASEAN nations. Devin?
All right, thank you very much for that. Our Hwang Ho-jun reporting from Tokyo. We'll check back with him later. Now, important meetings happening today, not just in Tokyo, but also in Pyongyang. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in North Korea for the second time in a matter of weeks for meetings with officials there, presumably to get ready for President Trump's meeting with Kim Jong-un. Last time Pompeo went to the north, it was in secret, but this trip was announced by President Trump himself. Our correspondent at South Korea's Unification Ministry, Oh Jung-hee, is on the line with more. Jung-hee, Mike Pompeo is in Pyongyang again. Have we learned anything about what he's been doing, who he's meeting with, and when are we going to hear more about plans for the summit?
Good afternoon, Devin. This is Justin. We're now hearing that U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo met with North Korea's Kim Jong-un in Pyongyang today. Kim Jong-un is North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's close political aide, as well as Mike Pompeo's direct counterpart for talks over the North Korea-U.S. talks since when Pompeo was head of the CIA. As for now, it's only known that Pompeo and Kim Jong-un promised to continue joint efforts for peace on the Korean Peninsula, but I'll be providing you with more updates as more details emerge. This is Secretary Pompeo's second visit to North Korea in just about a month, and many believe this could be a sign that new progress has been made regarding the first ever summit between the leaders of North Korea and the United States. In noting what President Trump has said, it seems likely that the date and location of the Pyongyang-Washington summit could be announced soon.
We have our meeting scheduled, we have our meeting set, the location is picked, the time and date, everything is picked, and we look forward to have a very great success. We think relationships are building with North Korea. We'll see how it all works out. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But it can be a great thing for North Korea, South Korea, Japan, and the entire world. We hope it all works out.
All right, Jung-hee, so maybe a date coming out soon, but the understanding is that Pompeo is in the north to finalize the agenda for the scheduled summit. One thing President Trump wants to talk about, of course, is the issue of the 3 American detainees. Can we expect any progress on that front?
Well, when asked whether the 3 Americans detained in North Korea would be released, President Trump has said that related news would come soon, adding that it would be a great thing if they make their way home. Hopes are high that the 3 Americans could return to the U.S. with Pompeo, and that's especially because, in contrast to Pompeo's last Pyongyang visit, which was completely secret, this visit involves a couple of American reporters raising the prospect that the Trump administration might want to create a dramatic scene. On his way to Pyongyang, Pompeo told reporters he has not yet received a commitment from the regime that it'll release the detainees, but he added he will bring up the issue, saying he hopes Pyongyang will, quote, do the right thing. Back to you, Devin.
All right, Oh Jung-hee at the Unification Ministry in Seoul, thank you for that. And we now know that Kim Jong-un has made another secret visit to China to meet with President Xi Jinping. This time, the two met in the northeastern Chinese city of Dalian. It was a little over a month ago when they met in Beijing. In their latest summit, the two leaders agreed to strengthen their strategic cooperation, but it's not yet clear what role the North sees for China in the ongoing dialogue for denuclearization and peace. Hong Yu reports.
Strengthening strategic communication between Beijing and Pyongyang. That was the main focus of the talks between the leaders of North Korea and China at their second summit earlier this week. Using his private jet, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un flew to China's northeastern city of Dalian on Monday for a 2-day trip, only about 40 days after his first summit with President Xi in late March. And at the summit talks, the leaders of Pyongyang and Beijing saw eye to eye on the significance of North Korea and China ties amid the ongoing diplomatic turnaround on the Korean Peninsula. Both leaders expressed hope to take their relations to the next level and further strengthen their strategic communication. President Xi highlighted Beijing's role. He said China is paying great attention to the recent developments on the peninsula and pouring constant efforts into ensuring regional peace and stability. Views are divided as to why Kim Jong-un made the visit at this time. Some say Pyongyang could be playing its Beijing card as some areas are proving difficult to iron out with the U.S. in denuclearization talks. But others believe North Korea could be looking at a bigger picture to seek a more balanced diplomacy between Washington and Beijing after North Korea-U.S. talks. While things have been rolling out at a rapid pace among the two Koreas and the U.S., it remains to be seen whether China will join the fray and complete a 4-party structure. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
Now, Kim Jong-un is reported to have used his own private jet to fly to Dalian for his meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. There's speculation that his decision to fly to China means that he's preparing for what could be a North Korea-U.S. summit in Singapore. Lee Seung-jae explains.
A different venue and a different mode of transportation for North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on his second trip to China in just over a month.
Our Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un left Pyongyang on the morning of May 7th via private jet.
Kim, who's known to take his private jet during trips around North Korea, made his first trip by air outside the country. The distance between Pyongyang and Dalian is a mere 360 kilometers, but experts believe the decision to go by plane was more about him just wanting to get there quicker than he would have by car or train. Watchers say Kim may be preparing for his upcoming meeting with President Trump, with reports signaling the summit could be held in Singapore. With North Korea's airplane technology limited to Soviet-era planes, many question whether his private jet is actually capable of flying over 4,000 kilometers to Singapore. Stopping halfway to refuel could also prove embarrassing by showing the limits of the aircraft, and where to stop would also be tricky. Others say the recent trip isn't a test of the jet's capability, but to further show his image as a leader and to craft a different image to that of his late father, Kim Jong-il, who was known to be afraid of flying. In recent years, Kim Jong-un has staged a series of photo ops designed to show that not only does he not share his father's fear of flying, but that he's even a pilot. Dubbed Air Force Un by many, will Kim's aging personal jet be able to make it all the way to Singapore? Some say that should be the least of his worries as he prepares for his big meeting with President Trump, a summit where the stakes for both sides couldn't be higher. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
In other news, South Korea's finance minister has admitted that future inter-Korean economic projects will require cooperation with the international community. Speaking in a local radio interview this morning, Kim Dong-yeon said Seoul is carrying out internal preparations to organize and implement possible economic projects with the North and is watching the upcoming summit between Pyongyang and Washington. With regards to financing, he said North Korea will have to join the IMF, which is required by organizations like the World Bank and the Asia Development Bank as a condition for getting development funds. He added that the process of joining the IMF would take about 3 years because the organization needs to analyze economic data and statistics. I'm Devin Whiting, and those are your news headlines for this hour.
Earlier, our Blue House correspondent Hwang Ho-jun gave a summary of the South Korea, Japan and China summit held in Tokyo earlier today. We heard some comments from the three leaders, but let's have a quick listen to some more of what they had to say.
3국은 전 세계 인구의 5분의 1, 전 세계 총생산의 4분의 1, 전 세계 교역액의 5분의 1을 차지할 만큼 세계 경제의 성장과 발전에 중요한 역할을 하고 있습니다. 한반도의 평화와 안정을 정착시킬 책임도 공유하고 있습니다. 우리가 힘과 뜻을 모으면 한반도와 동북아의 평화와 번영의 새로운 시대를 열 수 있음을 확신합니다. 이제 3국은 세계사적 대전환을 이끌어내는 진정한 동반자가 될 것입니다.
Japan seeks to settle the unfortunate wartime past with North Korea and normalize relations if North Korea takes concrete steps to abandon its nuclear and missile programs and comprehensively resolve the abduction issue. This has been Japan's consistent position. The three leaders here today had a frank exchange of opinions on how to get North Korea to change its current policy and start walking the proper path to a brighter future.
We welcome the positive developments in getting Korean Peninsula issues back on the path to a peaceful settlement through consultation and dialogue. We also welcome and have expressed our congratulations on the success of the third Inter-Korean Summit. We hope the leaders' meeting between North Korea and the U.S. will materialize, and we support dialogue between Japan and North Korea as well.
Now, to take a look at that meeting and break down the other events of the day, we have with us Professor Song Se-ryun from Kyung University. Professor Song, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
You're welcome.
Now, there's a lot to unpack today, but let's start with the Trilateral Summit. It's the first of its kind in 2.5 years, and that's quite a long hiatus, considering how close geographically and politically the three countries are. How do you think it went today?
I think it went very well. Although it's billed as a 7th Trilateral Summit, so it has a regularity to it, but I think that this is significant because of the North Korea dialogue and the peace process. In that sense, it was a necessary and timely dialogue among the key players, and sort of like lining the ducks in a row before the big talk between the North Korea and the United States. Necessary messages were aired, support for the Panmunjom and complete denuclearization support, and also economy. So I think it was a necessary step diplomatically, and also bolstered the South Korea's kind of driving this process. So in that sense, overall, it was a positive move.
Could you almost say North Korea brought these three together at this point in time?
Right. At this point, North and South Korea is driving it. But if you look at it, it all started from the North Korea's New Year's message, belligerent to the U.S., but at the same time talking about, bettering the relationship between North and South Korea. And I think it kind of set everything into motion. So the real player behind the scenes so far has been North Korea.
Interesting. So Japan and China both showed support for the Inter-Korean Summit and the Panmunjom Declaration. They also talked about denuclearization and peace and prosperity in the East Asian region. Now, how important is the role of Japan and China, and how important is the role of South Korea as a mediator in the situation?
Right. If you look at the whole process, there are several aspects to it. I think you can break down into three. One is the North and South relationship, which has been taken care of by the looks of it. Second part is some sort of peace treaty to end the war. But the third part, I guess the denuclearization would fall into the second phase. But in exchange for that, North Korea would expect some sort of collaboration or the windfall for the economic aspect of it. I think in the third part, China and Japan, and in fact, actually the world community is a very important factor in making that happen. So South Korea is driving the process. And I think to the credit of President Moon's leadership, he has communicated enough to all the key players. And today's dialogue between the summits, among the summits of key players, is an important kind of plug-in at this point.
But the three countries in the past, when dealing with North Korea, they sometimes had a conflict of interest with each other. How do you view this relationship developing with that in mind?
Well, that's one of the benefits, because we have a much larger issue of the peace treaty and the peace process in the Korean Peninsula. All those disputes and tit-for-tats have been kind of subsumed under that big agenda. So I hope that the relationship that gets better and better would probably look for some ways of resolving some of the issues that we have been struggling with.
Okay, so we also got confirmation this morning that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un met with Xi Jinping in Dalian, confirming rumors earlier. Now, it's his second trip to China, and this time he even flew by plane. What should you take away from this meeting this time?
Well, it's a drama in the development. If we assume that, I don't think it's unreasonable, that the big event is the talk or the negotiation between the North Korea and U.S., kind of representing two sides. It's an event of the decade, if not the event of the century. I think that all those interested parties are on the table at this point, if not physically, but in terms of relationships. So North Korea is looking for a North Korea-China alliance sitting from the other side, from the U.S., which represents kind of the big interest or negotiation partner. So in that sense, there was a flurry of communications and negotiations and also move inside North Korea, between the North Korea and China, and also within the United States, and Pompeo flying to Pyongyang, and all those things represent a preparation, very rigorous preparation from both sides, from North Korea side and also U.S. side.
You mentioned there just now, U.S. sending U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to Pyongyang. That was obviously revealed quite surprisingly by Trump when they were talking about the Iran when they were talking about withdrawing from the Iran deal. This is again the second time Pompeo has gone to Pyongyang to speak to North Korean officials. We're not quite sure yet whether he'll meet with Kim Jong-un this time, but there's also talk about him coming back with the US detained citizens. Should we see these developments as a positive sign?
I think it was a positive sign and also expected sign. We were expecting that North Korea will offer some sort of gesture of peace and the humanitarian side. So detainees in North Korea is perfectly fits that bill. I wouldn't be surprised if Pompeo flies back with the 3 detainees. But on the other side is that probably the big news that come out of this visit would be the place and time for the big summit between the North Korea and Trump. So we got 2 issues. Do they want to do it all at the same time, or do they want to parse it out to increase the dramatic effect? It's up to them, I guess.
Right, because they've been teasing us about the time and place for quite a few days now, quite a few weeks. Trump himself today as well mentioned, that they have a time and place and that they will make an announcement soon. Why do you think they have been delaying it so far? Do you think it's just a matter of timing? Do you think it's just they want to get all the details in first?
Right. I think it's driven by the details, and probably considering the significance of this meeting, the place and time, I think, is very important. That's why you need to have all the necessary dialogues before that happens. So Trilateral Summit today has that significance as well. And also, I think people are speculating whether it be Panmunjom or the 3rd countries. So I don't think we have resolved that, although those people who have decided it already know it. It's a matter of announcement. But either way, I think that will represent kind of a rigorous negotiation process that both parties have been conducting.
And of course, as you said, we can't forget the other big news of the day today, Trump pulling out of the Iran deal. Now, obviously, this has major implications in the Middle East, but let's stick to North Korea for us today. What impact do you think this move will have in negotiations with Pyongyang?
Although the act of pulling out of this deal, it's not new. It's something that Trump has been talking about all throughout the campaign. So I don't think it's directly related to North Korea. But however, there is a significance and implication to it. I mean, it's somewhat of a negative implication, meaning that if the U.S. can pull out of something that they have initiated and signed, then how can you trust if any deal is reached between the North Korea and the U.S.? But at the same time, if you look at it, another side of the message is that the U.S. will be very tough on the content of the deal, and it will be very detail-oriented as to what kind of impact the deal has. So it's all the more reason that the detail is very important, and I think that's why the working level negotiation at this point might be much more significant at this point of the juncture, so that what kind of denuclearization they come up with and what kind of framework they put in for economic collaboration between the U.S. and the North Korea and with the adjoining countries and frankly with the whole global community. So in that sense, the Iran pulling out, the Iran deal pulled out today might be a little bit unrelated to the North Korea deal directly, but at the same time, it represents what U.S. is pushing for and what kind of a seriousness that they putting into this whole process.
Well, it's certainly been an interesting day full of announcement, but we're waiting, of course, for the big announcement of the time and location of the US-North Korea summit. Thank you for coming in again, Professor, and we look forward to having you again.
Thank you.
Well, that's it from us here at this hour, but do stay tuned into Arirang News for more updates and analysis on the day's top stories here in Korea and around the world. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.